Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic. Let's do it. What's the creepiest or strangest thing you've seen while driving on the highway? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Me and my two buddies are driving back from Colorado in the middle of the night when we see a blue truck pulled over on the side of the interstate. It's pitch black, nothing for miles, and there's a girl standing out in the road. The girl comes up and starts explaining that she ran out of gas. Now maybe I'm a bastard for thinking this, but when people start to interject God into what should be normal conversations, my bullshit meter starts going off. Every sentence contains some reference, and she must have blessed us 15 times. Then we realized she was standing there holding a big gas tank. Now, I'm sure some people have gas tanks in their trucks, but I've never seen anyone drive around with one. So it came across to me like she had done this before, and the gas tank was like a prop. However, the last thing that really made it creepy was that as the conversation was wrapping up, I noticed the flash of light in the truck. When I asked her what it was, she said it was her boyfriend. There was no mention of the boyfriend before, and who sends their girl to stand in the middle of the interstate at night? So we're a bit weirded out, but we end up taking the gas tank and filling it up and start looking for a cop to tell him where they broke down and have him deliver the gas. Wouldn't you know it? When you want to find one, there are no cops in sight. So we end up driving back over there, but we passed them a bit. The girl started running up to us, but we didn't want to risk getting jumped or something. So I opened the passenger door, set the gas on the side of the interstate, and we peeled off, never to be seen again. I was once driving through the middle of nowhere in Kentucky quite late at night. Along the way, I passed a church, which wasn't uncommon in that area. I'd seen a lot of them that driving, but this one had several strange things about it. First, the parking lot was full, like there were people there, but the light coming from the church, the main visible light, was from the top. I think it's called a steeple, but some from windows too. It was a really weird red color, rather than what you'd normally expect to come from a building lit up at night. The third and creepiest thing was there was a cross out front on the lawn that looked like it had been thrown out of the church. It wasn't upright and it wasn't flat. It was stuck in the ground via the top and one of its sides. It wasn't huge and looked like one person could easily carry it, and it gave the impression that someone took it out of the church and flung it away. The whole thing creeps me out to this day. One time I was driving with my girlfriend through Wisconsin on the way back home. It was really late, like 2 or 3 in the morning, and I stopped at a gas station to fill up. My GPS ended up putting me on a small highway instead of the expressway right away after leaving there, but I didn't want to complicate things more, so I just followed it. My girlfriend was sleeping, so I had the radio off and drove in silence on this really dark, creepy highway. There were deer crossing signs, so I was driving extra cautious because a family friend had recently hit a deer in their truck, which did quite a number on it, and also caused her to break her arm from the impact. I saw there was a pretty sharp curve coming up, so I slowed down to make it carefully, and as I'm turning, I see a figure exiting the darkness of the woods. It's a large mountain lion with blood stained all over the front of its face. Scared the F out of me. I pulled up just after the turn and tried to wake my girlfriend up. I could see its large shadow make its way across the road in my rear view mirror. But by the time my girlfriend woke up, it was gone. She had lived in Wisconsin most of her life and immediately dismissed my claims that it was a mountain lion because they are not really from that area. I told her I knew what I saw, but she insisted that I was seeing things. I acted like she was probably right and continued the trip back, but I know what I saw. This was not creepy or strange, but it was very scary. My husband was driving us on I-35 through Austin at a pretty good clip when I said, slow down now, because a freaking full-size dresser just flew out of a pickup truck 2 vehicles in front of us. I could see that the car directly in front of us was going for the left lane because there was room, but there was already a car to our left. He was able to avoid a horrible wreck. We were all going the speed limit, and there were still things flying out of the truck. A small trash can, boxes, a couple of dresser drawers, etc. We didn't have our cell phones with us, otherwise we'd call it in. He tried to flash his lights at the truck, but to no avail. I hate people who don't secure their loads. It is one of the most obnoxious things when people don't secure things in the back of their vehicles. It's very dangerous and could kill people. I got behind a pickup and saw someone sitting in the bed of the truck. At first, I rolled my eyes. Sitting in the bed of pickups is not totally uncommon where I live, but it's super dangerous on the highway. Usually, it's stupid teens who are invincible or just a large group of people who couldn't fit in the cab. Still, full speed on the highway is rare. Then I get a closer look, and it was just a single woman back there, a grown woman. And I could tell by the shadows in the not very tinted windows that there was just one man driving. The passenger seat was empty. The woman's hair was whipping all around, and when it cleared from her face, I could see she was crying, like chest-heaving crying. So a grown man driving alone in a cab, with a grown woman in the bed crying, is driving down the highway. My only guess was that it was an abusive or kidnapping situation. I just can't think of any other logical or good reason for a scenario like that. I called 911 and tried to stay behind them, but eventually lost them in traffic. I was at least able to give the operator the description of the truck and woman and the direction they were going in. The operator, upon hearing the description and what I saw, sounded very concerned. I never found out what came of it. Nobody's going to see this, surprise, but I've got the creepy factor covered. My boyfriend had a 20-year-old car with mismatched doors, and he lived on the top of a long, winding mountain road. One day we were coming down the mountain when we saw the same car coming towards us. It was pouring rain, so we weren't able to make out any details of the driver or passenger, but it was the exact same car with the same mismatched doors. We turned around as soon as we could and raced back up the mountain to try to catch up with them, but we weren't able to. This was 15 years ago, and we both think it was us coming back up the mountain in some sort of weird alternate universe or timeline. Not sure what to call it. My dad is from Louisiana, so we used to spend a few weeks in the summer there growing up. One night, my cousin, brother, and I were fishing for catfish in the middle of nowhere. We catch a few, load them up, and head home. It's about 1 or 2 a.m. As we were driving out of the woods in the middle of nowhere, there was a group of about 30 to 40 people staggering around the road. These people looked really pale, and their clothes were all beat up and worn out. We stopped the car to watch them and to see if they would pass, but they just kept staggering everywhere aimlessly. So we started to move the car slowly in between them, but right as we got in the middle, they started to come at our car and try to get in it, and we floored it and got out of there. It was one of the weirdest things I've ever seen in my life. Probably some crazy cult or something like that. As I drove on a 2-lane road with some friends, we saw a figure near the edge of the road. Keep in mind, this is a rural area. I slowed down a bit as we got closer and noticed the figure held a staff and stood in a weird tribal-like stance with knees bent but pointed outward. He wore a tiki-looking mask and began to feverishly move the staff. Honestly, it seemed like he was shooing us away or trying to appear threatening. I didn't stop, I just kept driving. We drove on for a while before anyone mentioned it. It was really bizarre because people in this area aren't prone to artistic expression or anything that causes one to stand out. I've never seen anyone dress up in costume outside of Halloween, although we were freaked out at the time. It seems pretty hilarious now. As a kid, maybe pre-teens, I was headed up north on a family vacation. My brother, sister, and I were in the back of the truck with a covered topper. We had plenty of blankets, pillows, books, toys, and even a boombox to keep us occupied, plus a window in the cab that we could open if we needed anything. At some point early in the morning, while my siblings were asleep, I found myself just staring out at the stars against the black sky. That's when I saw something no one would ever believe. Not until years later anyway. A flash of bright orange lights lit up and zoomed across the night sky, intertwining and weaving about as they flew across my view out of the side window, vanishing almost as quickly as they appeared. I had seen my first UFO. I was convinced. I was also the only one to see it. My mom said I was probably asleep and dreamt the whole thing, but I know I was awake. I know what I saw. I knew life existed outside of our planet, and I knew they were here. Years later, I was riding in my family SUV as we headed home from visiting family. Mom was driving, and my siblings were once again sleeping when suddenly it happened again. The same orange lights were flying across the night sky, but this time, instead of a mix of wonder, excitement, and fear, I burst out laughing. My mom had just rolled her window down and flicked her cigarette out the window. I've not experienced anything creepy or scary, but I think that I creeped out a woman several years ago. It was late. I was driving home from my friend's house, and I live in the countryside, so the roads at 1 a.m. are usually very quiet. I was making progress when I saw a car in the distance going a little slower than the speed limit, so I caught up to it within a couple of miles. They were plodding along slowly, so I may have been a bit close, but not dangerously so. Anyway, I need to make some turns off the main road and onto side streets to get to my house, and the car in front is taking the same turns. Okay, whatever. Maybe they live in my village. It's late, so I wasn't bothering to indicate because apart from the car in front, there was no other traffic at all. They take the turn from my village. They take the turning from my road, which is a long cul-de-sac with 15 houses. They pull up on the driveway of my house. I drive around their car to pull up in front of my garage and turn to look at the driver sitting in her car in my driveway. She gives me a look of pure horror mixed with rage, which I shrug off as she does a 55-point turn over my garden and disappears into the night. It was the following morning when I finally twigged that she thought I was following her, and she was making what she thought were odd turns to see if I was stalking her, possibly for nefarious reasons. I don't know, but somehow she ended up at my actual house and trapped because my road is a dead end. So hey, sorry about that. I'm not a weirdo, but I was pretty tired and wanted to go to bed. You're also not my type of random lady. My family station wagon blew a flat in the middle of the night on I-95 as we exited the city of Miami. I was 5 years old and riding along with my mom, grandparents, sibling, and dad who was driving when the tire blew. It was the 1980s. When the tire blew, everyone freaked out a bit. For some reason, my dad kept driving on the flat, even though we were traveling at a high speed. Eventually, the tire worn down or fell off, and we were riding on the rim, sparking down the freeway in the middle of the night. I remember the energy in the car turning to fear, but something was off. I was told when I was older that my dad saw a man in the center median throw a strip of nails attached to something in the middle of the highway, which my dad could not avoid. It turns out that people were using this method to rob and carjack highway drivers in the middle of the night. My dad somehow was aware of what was happening and responded accordingly by not stopping to change for their several miles. Luckily, we had a full-sized spare. We changed the tire several miles down the road and made it home safely. TLDR. My family was not carjacked, and who knows what else because my dad rolled with the punches. Situational awareness cannot be overstated as a necessary tool for survival. I feel somewhere along the line we're starting to lose some of it. Stay vigilant. Mine is really tame, but it still caught me off guard. I used to drive through the mountains routinely in Japan to get to the jiu-jitsu gym. It was about an hour-long trip back and forth. I'd go up the mountains and then down and come out in the valley on the other side. I'd usually be driving back home around 11 p.m. because of how late our class went. Up in the mountains, that meant it's pitch black, and you're on a bunch of winding roads, completely isolated from the rest of the world. So I'm driving along, and I come around a turn. My headlights hit what I can only describe as the actual face of the devil hiding back in the trees a few feet. 2 horns, glowing eyes, and a light but unkempt beard if you picture Satan. It was an exact facsimile, just staring at me, unmoving, unflinching, and uncaring. It just looked directly at me, staring into my eyes. Headlights caught it for only a second or two, but I instantly broke out in a sweat, and my heart was beating out of my chest. The thing is, I'm such a staunch atheist. I'm about as strong as an atheist as one can get. But this scared the hell out of me. My adrenaline was pumping for about 10 minutes. So, what did I see? It was a Japanese Siro. Google it. They look very much as described. And when you catch one in the woods, a little to hide its body and catch with your headlights. I kid you not. I looks exactly like a devil. Years ago on I-95, traffic was moving about 75 to 80 miles per hour on a nice day. I was passing a big old RV. He was going about 70 and I was going about 80. As I was positioned right next to the RV, about even with its front wheels, I heard a strange thud from outside and suddenly got passed by a large, thin, round object rolling between me and the RV doing at least 100 miles per hour. I thought the RV had lost a hubcap, but as it zoomed past us and started to veer slowly off toward the shoulder, I realized to my complete and utter disbelief and horror that it wasn't a hubcap at all. It was a turn. The RV had clipped the poor reptile on the edge of the lane. Somehow, I never saw it crossing the road, and launched it right into oblivion. I have never been so simultaneously emotionally torn, horrified and sickened, yet also laughing so uncontrollably that I could barely drive. I felt horrible for the turtle, of course, but then again, a freaking turtle just passed me doing at least 100 miles per hour on I-95. I'm certain the turtle was killed instantly and didn't have to suffer. I actually went back later that day to try and find his remains at the world's fastest Chlorian, but couldn't identify the exact spot in heavy traffic. My wife and I were driving up through northern Arizona on Highway 89 between Flagstaff and Page. It was about 1 a.m. as we were on our third shift at the time and often drove at night to avoid traffic. I saw a few sets of eyes glowing in my headlights a little ways up the road, so I let off the gas, slowing down to avoid hitting an animal on the road. When we drove by, we saw several dogs, coyotes, on the side of the road, and I hit the gas and drove by. After we passed, my wife said one of them was running next to the car, and I looked over and saw it as well, probably 20 feet off the shoulder of the road. I floored it and looked over, and it stood up on its hind legs. That's the only way I can describe it, and kept pace with us for a couple of seconds before turning away from the road and disappearing. The whole event probably lasted no more than 10 seconds, but was seriously terrifying. 10 seconds of my life. That was probably 20 years ago, and we still rarely talk about it. My uncle kept having dreams about him driving. In his dreams, he would drive around this cliff area when he came to this sharp curve that was unguarded on the side that was so steep that it basically ran to the bottom of the mountain. When he got to this corner, his tire suddenly just exploded. Same tire for every dream. He would then have an out-of-body experience and watch his car drive off of the cliff, and he would fly out of the car and tumble down the hill, mangling himself the whole way down. He would then lay on the hill for 5 days without being found. He kept having this dream for about a month. It officially creeped him out to the point where he went to the auto repair shop to get it checked out. It turns out that there was a flaw in the exact same tire that was blowing up in his dream that would have made the tire explode without warning. They didn't know for how much longer it would have been, but they said he was lucky that he came in when he did. The dreams stopped after that. A couple of months later, he went to visit my grandma and granddad when he was driving somewhere very familiar. That's when he realized he was looking at the exact same cliff from his dream. He stopped the car, pulled over, and stepped out to take a breather. He had taken the route before, but the cliff had never stood out to him before. Although our family is very religious, he never really believed in it, but he swears that something out there is protecting him. When he was telling me and my sister this story, he was shaking because it still scares him to this day. He truly believes that he would have died on that day.